You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE is one of the world's largest exchange holding companies, and we're inspired every day to innovate some of the industry's most powerful products, technology, and solutions. We're the industry's leading force driving access to global markets, a better trading experience, and powerful data and analytics to inform better strategies. We're committed to engineering new ways to help our customers realize their potential and navigate the marketplace of tomorrow, today. Visit CBOE.com. That's CBOE.com to learn more about our expanded offerings. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. You guys listen it live might say, hey, what's up? No music. You guys sound a little different. Well, you could thank our friends over at Microsoft for that. Another one of these updates that they forced through knocked out our production computer. Hopefully, maybe we'll see if we can get everything up and running for good old Twifo in about an hour and a half. Meanwhile, though, you still got us. You got us live. And if you're listening after the fact, it'll sound pretty much the same to you. I may sound a little different because I'm on a different setup, but you'll hear the music and everything else. Live, folks, you get to fight on through, hear the raw version today. No transitions, no music, just us holding down the fort, talking all things crazy volatility. And it is indeed a crazy day to talk it. By the way, if you are listening after the fact and you say, how do I get those guys live? It's every Friday, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, via the old Mixlr. That's MIXLR. If you guys follow us on any of our platforms on the website or on social media, that could be Twitter, Facebook, etc., so on and so forth, you've seen that link that we put out there multiple times throughout the week. Just grab it once and then bookmark it, and you're good to go. If you want, you can also follow us there in Mixlr. You get notified the second we go live, not just with this show, but Twifo later today, Option Block a couple times a week, some of our interview shows and other shows, Options Bootcamp, that we like to do live there as well. So a lot comes out via that feed. So if you're not checking it out, make sure you do so. And of course, however you listen live after the fact, hit us up. We do actually like to have some questions from you guys. It is kind of fun. And joining me on the old program today, by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian. Mr. Meatball, how go things in volatility land, a.k.a. Carmen Line, sir?
It's quite the day today. Kind of craziness. We were setting up for kind of what everybody thought was going to be a nice collapse of implied volatility around, the tax reform bill getting all taken care of. And then we had this whole ABC News story about Donald Trump. And it sounds as bad as you might expect, actually. So it was markets went tumbling. I have not seen them make that nasty of a move in a while. So at one point, I think the S&P was down 30, and it was just craziness abounded. I've not seen that kind of movement in a while. But and then we saw the VIX spike all the way above 14. It went from around 11 to to above 14 to now still around almost 13. So there's some fear out there, and there's a lot of uncertainty. I think a lot of people don't know what's going to happen. Now, the S&P has rallied, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all's well and good for the overall market. Definitely not nothing's a done deal with the S&P 500. You know how it is.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, I guess, about a year ago now, because it was right before the election when we saw that week leading up to the election, and we saw all of a sudden the announcement that the Hillary investigation was being reopened into the emails, and all of a sudden we saw it was in the middle of our show, as you recall, and all of a sudden we saw the market take a dive and volatility just kind of spring to life out of nowhere. This kind of has a little bit of a flavor similar to that. Would you agree, sir? It
does. It has the question is, whether there's anything real to this. Is it a guy just trying to save his butt, or is it a guy that really has something?
Well, we shall discuss that and a lot more as we roll right on into the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review. This is, of course, the portion of the program where we break down what was moving, what was shaking in a pretty crazy week for all things volatility, as we kind of just alluded to at the top of the show. It's been a weird one. We had a missile launch from North Korea, which the market shrugged off. I don't know if you heard, Mark. I was talking on our other show yesterday about how I have a friend who claimed to have the insight into when North Korea was launching the missile.
I was on for that, yeah.
And he thought he would get at least a good 10 handles. And for what it's worth, his system did work. He got about at least 10 minutes ahead of the announcement. So he had a good 10 unfettered moments of access, and he ended up having to scramble to carve out about maybe a handle. Before it just rallied in his face and almost took his face off. So we're in a weird environment. So it does that just shows it takes a lot to derail this bulling, and that's exactly what we're seeing today as we're recording this about noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern here, listeners. So about halfway through the session, most of the major indices kind of taking it on the chin, as Mark alluded to. Not quite as bad as maybe the initial blush, but again, the session is not over. The S&P is off about 0.5% right now, right around 14, 15 handles. The Dow off a similar percentage. Tech-heavy NASDAQ leading the charge to the downside right now, off about 0.8% out there. And, of course, all this red means VIX is back. VIX was roaring back previous to today. We were talking about, VIX is back. It hit briefly hit 12 and then retreated again. Today, not so much. Blowing through the 12 handle, blowing through the 13 handle, actually getting as high today as 1458 in VIX Cash, a level we haven't seen in quite some time. So welcome back, VIX. Let's see if you're here to stay or not. We know the last time we did this a few weeks ago, it was very short-lived. I have a feeling it might be that way again, because these things don't have a way of sticking, but this one does seem like it might have some resonance. So we shall see. As we are recording the show right now, right around the 13 handle in the old VIX Cash. So a lot of weird stuff popping off there. Mark, it has been kind of a weird week across the board. Like we mentioned, the missile not really doing much. Earnings kind of light at this point. There's not a lot left to really, with the exception, I should say, really of retail, the continuing crescendo that retail may indeed be back, or perhaps not as bad as everyone thought. It got kicked off last week with Walmart, and we saw some other names this week, perhaps adding to that narrative. That seemed to play into the market rally we saw throughout most of this week until, of course, today. So what's been catching your eye out here in all things VIX land, not just today, but all week?
It just, that kind of, the movement that we've had has been nuts. I've just been kind of shocked by the way it's gone up and down and up and down. It has been just bananas. So, I don't know what to tell you other than, wow, quite the movement. Just the amount of oscillation is we've not seen this kind of oscillation in a while. Other than that, I don't know that I've got anything, that's mind blowing. Other than it'll be interesting to see whether they'll be able to keep it up like this, or whether this is a short term drop. We just don't know. So that's the part I think is interesting to me.
Yeah, we have seen signs that vol was kind of springing to life towards the end of this week. Coming into today, the VVIX was quite elevated at a nice 90 level. Now, of course, with today's sell-off kicking in, we're seeing that elevation increase yet again. It's right around 104, 105 right now, so north of 100, which is always a good barometer. That I don't know, Mark. What's your barometer for VVIX? I like to look, and once I see it over 100,
I think 100.
Things are moving. But where do you start paying attention VVIX land?
Yeah, I'm with you. Right around 100, I consider it elevated, and then around, when it's closer to when it starts to get below 90, I start looking at it as potential, maybe there's something, it's getting too cheap. That's usually my kind of two main levels.
Yeah, it definitely seems to bottom out around the mid 70 level. That seems to be a reasonable floor. When it gets down there, it's kind of seems to be pretty stable. And then when it starts getting north of 100, things get crazy. Of course, when it gets in the 125, 130 plus range, then things are really rocking and rolling. Not quite there yet, listeners, but interesting stuff. Also interesting out there, I mentioned NASDAQ selling off. So the NASDAQ VIX, the old VXN, obviously getting a nice little boost today as well, up nearly about 1.5 handles. Almost, shall we say, 10% of percent there, Mr. Meatballs. I know you love that. About a 17.5 right now out there in NASDAQ land as we speak. So all of you guys who've lamented maybe VIX wasn't doing it for you for whatever reason, obviously VIX up today. But if that's not enough for you, then perhaps NASDAQ land is giving you a little bit of juice for your dollar there. Speaking of juice out there in the VIX futures, coming into today, it was an interesting bag. Obviously, that's changing now with the VIX Cash rocking and rolling throughout the day. But coming into this morning, we saw about a half point premium between the cash and the front month future, and right around 2 points, about 1.8 points or so handles or so for the 2 months out. Obviously, now with the cash in rock and rolling mode, that's going to move quite a bit. Did we get backward throughout the earlier part of today, Mr. Meatball?
Oh yeah, we did. Things got really screwy for a little bit. So yeah, it was pretty ugly for a moment there. I think we may still be backward for all I know, but it's definitely been kind of, the market is really on edge. So there is a lot of risk right now. I think it's hard to look at the kind of the overall VIXosphere and think, boy, this is a really safe place to be short. So it'll be interesting to see how our $100 million UVXY fund does over the next couple of days with all this oscillating.
Well, you wanted that. I thought you also were going to launch the $100 million, VXX Jan 10 puts fund.
Oh yeah!
Weren't you also raising another fund for those Tesla Jan 2019 50 puts? Those were huge for you too, right?
That's my biggest holding. That's all me. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Just sell a bunch of those and go away for 3 years and see how your fund does. What are you doing? Just waiting for
selling stuff.
just sitting on margin, just waiting. That's worth I think a management fee. I think just all that babysitting.
What could go wrong?
This is normally the portion of the show, Mr. Meatball. Well, I was hoping we could see if we could squeeze Russell in from Asia just to get a little update on all RMC Asia and all the stuff that's going on out there. He is, of course, over there in Hong Kong, but unfortunately, I think it's like 2 a.m. over there, or something like that. So couldn't make it work with Mr. Rhodes. We'll get an update from him because he loves to update us on the conferences. We'll get an update from him on next week's show. This is the portion of the show, though, usually, Mr. Meatball, where we do also a nice little deep dive into all things VIX weekly options. And since Dr. VIX is not here, I'm curious, Mr. Meatball, if over there in the pitch chat or in between slinging all those Jan 10 puts and VXX for Carmen line, if anything caught your eye out there from a VIX weekly options perspective, sir.
There was some There was a couple interesting trades. Same kind of thing. We had traders buying like the weekly 19s and selling the regular. This guy's been up to that a bunch. This is the guy that likes to sell like a regular contract and then buy a bunch of weekly out of the monies on a crazy ratio against it. And he was at it again. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But that was really the only one that really popped out to me. Russell's weekly rundown. It's not Mark's weekly rundown, sadly.
Yeah, Russell's 28 pages. The man really gets into tracking his weekly paper. I think last week, what did he say? He had 5 pages of activity. I don't think he'd have quite that many this week until coming into the last couple of sessions. Then that might change. You might have 5 pages just after today's activity. It's been like you said, a bit of a weird one. Let's flip the page over though to the big VIX mothership options. It's been kind of an interesting day. Let's see if an interesting week, of course, as well. Let's see how we stand here middle through the session. It's been kind of an active day, shall we say, Mr. Meatball? What do you take a flying guess on how many big VIX motherships contracts have gone up just so far today, middle of the session, 12 Central?
I'm going to say 1.2 million.
You would think something like that, and you would be a reasonable person if you guessed that. But no, unless my screens are just blowing up with craziness, which is, I guess, a possibility because this system's been funky lately. But it's showing me almost 2.9 million contracts.
Oh my gosh!
On the tape,
wow.
Which is, it means we're heading for record territory today. Obviously, 2.9 million by little past noon centrals. This is definitely going down as perhaps the craziest day. Perfect day for our live stream to go down because no one's talking VIX today.
I mean, you had just everything, the perfect scenario line up where, we were looking for, I think in the morning, everybody was assuming vol was going to get smushed and position themselves as such. There were people buying the market and buying VIX protection. There were people buying stuff to fade VIX, all sorts of stuff. Then right as we have the votes on tax reform news comes out, this whole trumpet stuff, and you just get an entirely another explosion in volume. I've not seen that kind of oscillation and change in market expectations and that amount of news hit in one day. It was absolutely bananas. So that would be why the volume's high.
Mark, so it looks like we got our three-way friend coming back to play today. That's part of the reason why we're so active. I'm looking here at the top trades, and 209,000 of the D12 puts going up. Does that sound familiar? Then 418,000 of the D's 25 calls going up. Also, again, that one sounds familiar. We have 209,000 of the Jan 12 puts, so he's rolling out to the Jan 12 puts there. He's going out to the Jan, keeping the same strikes, it seems like. So 209,000 of the Jan 15 calls, 418,000 of the Jan 25 calls for 50 cents. So that would explain those numbers appear to be right then, because that was looking a little astronomical to me. So we have the crazy combo of already a crazy day in the market and this kind of unexpected sell-off driving a lot of vol action on top of our friend here deciding today's the day when he's going to change the term structure for the entire VIX options for the next few months and that's dominate crazy. our top most active list again. I'm about to do our top 10 for VIX, but I think today's action is going to obviate a lot of that because he's rolling out of a lot of this stuff now. So maybe substitute the D's top 3 with Jan, and you'll probably have the right answers here. But yeah, this guy, I'm just looking here. What's that? So you're already at 840,000 just enrolling the 25 calls. Another 418,000 just in the 15 calls, and another 418,000 enrolling the puts. So you're talking 1.6 million. And then, so you're talking, my God, that's talking over 2 million contracts just in this trade. So, that's a lot of paper. That's a
ton of paper.
And plus, on a day like today, VIX is going to be lighting it up anyway, hence the other 600,000 going on out there. But wow, that is.
I did not see that. Would be why.
That would explain a lot. I think the technical term is crazy cakes for for that kind of paper going up out there. Well, we can break down the top the top 10 VIX strikes. This is as of going into this morning. Obviously, this is going to change some come Monday, but in general, going into this morning, number one with the bullet was the D's 25 strike with 840,000. Guess what's going to be coming in as of tomorrow? I'm guessing maybe Jan may be running into that.
I'm gonna guess
into that list. D's 15s, number 2, 575,000. And number 3, of course, the D's 12 puts 483,000. So that's part of the interesting thing about our three-way friend here, because he doesn't just play alone. He sets up these strikes, and people, they kind of like lampreys flock into a whale. People just flock to these strikes. So they keep growing and growing throughout an OI throughout the entire time that this trade is on. So by the time he rolls it, there's still a 500,000 open on each of these strikes that he's doing. So this is a funky day for sure. Number 4, the D's 20s, 332,000. Number 5. The D's 17s, about 250,000 going up there. Number 6, the D's 22s, 242,000. Number 7, the second and only other put on our list, the D's 11 puts, about 235,000 open there. Number 8, D's 23s with 231,000. Number 9, the D's 16s, 219. Rounding out the top 10, Feb. I misspoke. The first Feb on our list, the Feb 22s with 195,000. Are those you, Mr. Meatball? Those have a feeling that those are meatball strikes. You love yourself a little Feb upside, do you not?
I do, but those are not me. I'll be honest.
Yeah, the size is a little small. I think only 195,000. Carmen Line doesn't get out of bed for 250,000 contracts, right?
No, that's yeah, well, that's a little too small for us, but it's definitely been interesting. All this volume has been nuts, but I think it shows the use case of why people like the product. It's a really good hedging product. And so people use it, and that kind of explains why it acts the way it acts. And why people are like, well, why is this short vol trade exist? Because there are people that need the long vol trade. There just are. And that is that would be why. So there is a use case for VIX for just about everybody, and it's not all just dumping VXX. I'm sorry to break it to you folks.
Though dumping VXX has been all right of late. Not so. Before we go on to VXX, any other? I mean, it's kind of hard to look past this just mighty whale that's slinging all the size today in the room. But anything else catching your eye today or this week, Mr. Meatball, from a VIX options perspective?
We saw a lot of strangle sellers, a lot of put buyers into this event, a lot of call buyers. 50 Cent was active today. I saw him step in and buy some stuff as well. So there's all sorts of players in the market right now, which is fascinating.
Some interesting things. Speaking of interesting, what's cooking out here? We mentioned, we said before about just sell VXX and go away. That works until days like today when it's up about 5%. But VXX, talk about that erosion. It's already down. It got down to 31, I believe, as of. Let's just see how low it actually got. Just yes. So we were just talking, it just reverse split. It was just 47 like a month or so ago, Mr. Meatball.
Yeah.
This thing, the erosion has kicked in. Yeah, it got down to 31 and 31.05 back just a few sessions ago. So if you've been banking on that, how are those Jan 10 puts looking, Mr. Meatball? You still have any of those?
I'm short a ton. Yes, I still have a lot of those. And I know you're going to be shocked, but I'll bet you they're actually doing pretty well today. And the reason being because vol is so high now in VXX. So, give me a second here. I gotta look here. They are 32.38. So that customer is still a happy camper.
Yeah, they were printing a lot lower than that not too long ago. So yeah, we mocked that position, but it's turned out to be it's only about 20 handles out of the money now. So and you got a whole year plus to go. So
correct.
We've seen VXX erode nearly 20 handles just in the last month and a half. So got another year and change to do that again. That's not the craziest trade on the planet.
I've seen crazier.
Number 2, guess Mr. Meatball, since we're playing this game, guess the number 2 VXX options position right now?
Jan 50s.
50?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't see anyone that optimistic out there by any means.
Or Jan 40s or 30s.
If you were about to,
like
if you moved the decimal point in a little bit, maybe I would be and switched it to a put, and I could go with you. It was a Jan 2019 5 put.
Oh, really?
75,000 of those bad boys open.
Oh, that's crazy. That surprises me.
So there you go, Ratio City, sir. Get on it.
I like it.
Juicy.
I like it.
Juicy. Get those 10 puts for free. Make Andrew happy.
Sell the bananas out of that thing, yeah. How can I lose?
Exactly. How could you lose? And then followed hot on this. These strikes this is just all anybody's playing out there. Number 3, they're regular, so expiring in a few months, Jan 10 put, 74,000 open there. And the Jan 5 next expiring in a few months as well, with about 60,000 puts. So the top 4, the top 5 strikes are all Jan 10 or 5 puts. Just depends on what year you're talking about. So people have this is their game in VXX apparently, and they do it for size. And then number 5
Apparently.
and number 5 seems almost ridiculous by comparison. It's the March 24 put with 58,000. Those are practically in the money puts at this point. So
yeah.
I can't even look at that without laughing, sir. Oh, and you said Jan 50, right? You actually weren't. They're in the top 10. The Jan 2019 50s with they are number 10 though with 39,000.
Oh, go me. Go me.
So it wasn't as perhaps as outlandish as it initially seemed, but yeah, pretty outlandish nonetheless. Speaking of things that were not quite as outlandish this week, a little light on the earnings season this week. We were joking on Option Block earlier this week about 5 below being the market mover. Turns out, Mr. Meatball, they were pricing in some juice to 5 below. So maybe we mocked it in a little bit too early. Maybe we should watch that name in the future. Pricing in about a 10% move, which for a 60 handle name is pretty meaty. And then aside from that, there was VMware, a few other names. I know you like Ulta and all those lady retailers, Mr. Meatball. So
they're my favorite.
You're probably pretty excited about that one. But aside from that, there wasn't. Was anything lighting up the pit chat in terms of earnings this week, Mr. Meatball?
Not so much earnings, but we were all watching kind of. We were talking a little Ulta, and then for the most part, just kind of watching the individual stock names. There was a lot more interesting stock movement than there was in just like, Aetna. We saw that Aetna flow the other day. There's just all kinds of crazy stuff coming from that direction. So that was more where I saw stuff was in Aetna, and we played with CME Group and CBOE. I know you'll be shocked why, but
why could you possibly be interested in those names, sir? I am completely surprised.
People wanted to know about. Were really interested in Bitcoin futures, believe it or not. I know. I'm as shocked as you. That the
I was hoping we'd have Russell on to do some Bitcoin vol breakdown, because it's been another volatile week for Bitcoin, hitting 11,000, dropping back to around 9,000, I believe. So like a 2,000 point swing in the course of a session or so. So no volatility to be found out there, sir. That'd be. I'm waiting. No, what's going to be the most meta ultimate CBOE product when they finally launch it, which is going to be the Bitcoin VIX, right? That's coming.
Oh, the VIX?
The VIX. The VIX, yes. I'll sign me up for a VIX. I want to trade some of that.
That is 100% coming. And on top of that, you'll probably have Bitcoin options, which will be fun. Those will be crazy. I bet your Bitcoin options trade. If Bitcoin stays this hot, the amount of option trading that takes place in that is going to be just off the chains high. It will be nuts. It'll be like a whole nother VIX contract. It'll be so busy. So that's kind of interesting.
Let me ask you this before we get off Bitcoin really quickly. We've had this debate on a lot of our other shows. I don't think we've ever had it here, actually, where I think someone wrote into our TWIFO show about a month ago and kind of got the ball rolling on this. They were asking us what we thought if there were Bitcoin options listed now, what that volatility skew would look like. And we were kind of debating whether it would look like an index, whether the puts would be bid, or if it'd be like more like the old Apple days where the calls just bid to high heaven, everyone's got to have it, or where it would fall. I kind of got a feeling now, seeing the recent activity, where that would shape up now. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think it would look like a NASDAQ stock from 2000, where the at the money is actually the cheapest vol you can buy, and the puts and calls are both bid. That'd be my bet.
So smiley.
Yeah, I think you'd have a nasty smile on that thing. That's my gut.
Well, where there isn't nasty vol, Mr. Meatball, in the commodity space, it's crude. Our friends over there in OPEC conspiring to squeeze what little juice was left out of that sponge today when they decided to kind of go, I don't know. And so crude not exactly getting all the love from that. But people have been asking us for ages now in crude, what's going on with the vol? When can I buy some premium? When's it going to spark to life? And we've seen a few glimmers. But pretty much over the past year, ever since the last big OPEC meeting a year ago, there haven't been many good vol buying opportunities out there in crude. It's just been kind of a slow, ringing, painful death, and with a few fits of life before they crush you back down again. And it seems like we're back there now. OIV hitting just an anemic 21 today, which is pretty low. Back in the go W, of course, OIV, of course, the VIX of WTI listeners. And back in the go WTI days of about a year and a half ago or so, we never saw the bottom of OIV at that time would have been a nice, 35 or so. And here we are. That was like the absolute lowest it could possibly go. And now, of course, here we are, a good 14, 15 handles lower than that, and probably heading south. I don't know. I know you mostly trade USO when you trade the commodities, Mr. Meatball, but it's kind of a similar story out there as well. It's just finding juicy crude vol buying opportunities. A bit of a challenge over the past year, wouldn't you say? Yeah, I mean, crude was another one that had kind of skew in both directions. But now crude seems to be on its way up, and we've seen a lot of bullish action, not just crude, but nat gas and a few other things. So, kind of some interesting paper that we've seen out of the crude oil in the last couple of days and weeks. Well, speaking of interesting paper, you guys send your questions in on all sorts of interesting paper, even electronic paper. So let's get to it. Let's get to our volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL, posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol voicemail. This is, of course, the portion of the show where we break down what is cooking in your neck of the woods, what you guys are interested in talking about from volatility and all sorts of vol-related type things. Let me just typing in some things here as we speak. Here we go. Listen, that's what I was looking for. All right, but before we get to what I'm pulling up right now, Mr. Meatball, we kind of cheated yesterday on the option block. I kind of gave you the answer to our question of the week. So I won't ask you that one. Our question of the week this week, listeners, was, of course, what do we think people are actually trading out there in SPY? We see SPY dominating the headlines, dominating the volume charts. So we gave you guys four choices: Jan 262 call, Dees 2019 150 put, the Dees 280 call, or the Jan 240 put. I'll have to check the live voting. We'll see. People who listened live yesterday or listening to the podcast now, they know the answer. But the rest of you may still be guessing. The answer was, of course, Mr. Meatball, the Dees 280 calls, which is kind of a plain vanilla answer. I was hoping for something a little bit more exotic than that, but c'est la vie. Sometimes the obvious one is the right one. Let's see if our listeners have got. No, our listeners are still voting, and I guess a lot of them haven't listened to the live show yet, Mr. Meatball, because it's a tie between the Dees 2019 150 put and the Jan 240 put just jumped into the lead with 27%. So apparently they didn't listen to the live show. So they didn't hear the answer. The D's 280 call, the actual winner, is actually losing with only 21%. So that's
There
funny.
you go.
It shows how many people vote early before they hear. Twitter won't let you go back and change your answer. So once you're in,
There you go.
You are in. So let's mix it up a little bit, Mr. Meatball, and we'll do this instead. Because today is a crazy day, and I can't ask you the answer because I already just gave it to you again. Let's instead play the If We Did This Question Today game. So we did this question today, and the answer I'll tell you right now is different because things have been trading all week in SPY, and you know as well that it's SPY can change on a dime. Yep. And what do you think right now is the number one big dog out there in SPY? Number one with the bullet options position, sir.
Overall, I'm going to say the Jan 250 puts just became the biggest.
Interesting. I could certainly see an argument. My first blush for a lot of these is kind of near-term downside puts as well. It just seems to make sense.
We did see some crazy call buying.
Yeah, I think that's what we saw because it's the D expiring on the 29th, so the weeklies, 267 call. Leading the charge.
Customer did a couple 100,000 of those.
Yeah,
that's right.
89,000 of those coming in just in since the last time we checked, and followed on hot on its heels by the D 266 call, also expiring on the 29th with 435,000. So someone's got a little axe to grind on the upside here, Mr. Meatball and SPY, and they're letting it fly. Our former winner, the D's 280 calls, is now number 3, sir, with only 256,000. It seems paltry by comparison.
Really?
So these two trades have dwarfed it by almost 2x since Monday. So crazy town out there. And let's see if any of our others are still on there. I don't see any Jan puts here. They've all the Jan puts have been bumped off the list. The first put is the D's 280 strike is the place to be, I guess. 280 put, 227,000 of those open for number 4 out there in SPY. So surprising paper afoot in SPY out there. Speaking of surprising, you guys are always capable of surprising us out here. Here's a weird one. Here's from your buddy here, Mr. FContangotrader. I think he writes into the show almost every day. So we have a plethora of choices from him. He likes the show apparently. And he likes bugging you too, Mr. Meatball. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah, I know he does.
He sent something in a graph. I'm not sure if you can see it, Mr. Meatball. He says, I think we have a winner in the technical analysis of VIX world. And he sent in this graph. We'll include it in the show notes, listeners, so you can see. I'm not sure really what he's pointing to, but again, I'm not the biggest technical analysis man. He has what looks like a broadening bottom on VIX and then a broadening top. And he looks like the angling up. So it looks like this is pointing to, apparently, I guess, according to this metric, a broadening bottom. So maybe, and this came in a few days ago. So I guess if that's the case, then maybe he was correct. Because we've seen VIX kind of just do nothing but go north since. So who knows? Maybe our poo-pooing of technical analysis, Mr. Meatball, was a bit too soon in VIX land. What do you think?
I'm going to say that technical analysis on VIX is how would you technically analyze what was happening here, what happened today? You wouldn't. That's just. I mean, as much as I love FContangotrader, he's one of my all-time favorites. I just don't see that being a realistic how markets work, really, unfortunately, for our friend.
Oh, your friend's going to write to you now, sir. So expect a lot of angry tweets on that front. I just love bringing up the technical analysis of VIX because it's such a fun topic to poo-poo. I
mean, there can be. I mean, I know that some guys that are very good do watch like support and resistance stuff. That makes a lot of sense to me in the futures, not so much in the index itself, if that makes sense. I don't think it's like ludicrous as its own thing.
Like I'm sure your Typhon boys are watching support and resistance all day long. That's kind of what they do, right? But are they doing much charting beyond that?
Not for really just for. That's more of a play on. On their S&P stuff. I don't think they're watching like regular VIX for support and resistance. I mean, maybe they are, but I don't think so. I know that they care about the S&P though. So I'm going to give them a pass on that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just people continue to try to fit that square peg into the round hole. They insist that they like technical analysis and they can apply it to whatever the underlying is, regardless of what the fundamental mechanics of that thing are. And we've poo-pooed it on VIX many times. I've yet to see. I mean, I was obviously joking about this one. I obviously don't even know what the heck he's sending in here, which one he's suggesting. So I was just being charitable and assuming he picked the well-timed one. But yeah, it's kind of funny. People continue to try to beat this drum, and I've yet to see, this joking email aside, I've yet to see a actual example of this thing working in the wild. If you got it, listeners, send it in to us.
It's always interesting. There are some of these guys that are really good at tech that try and put VIX over it. It just does not make sense.
Well, yeah, it's a different beast. It doesn't have the same supply and demand characteristics or even the same fundamental underpinnings, as a stock.
Right.
So it's just a different beast. When you're talking a derivative of a derivative, the game is off. You got paper flow is driving everything now rather than anything else. Let's see. CConden asking here. Looks like the winning trade for the past few years has been rolling short VIX front month future with a protective call kicker should the worst come to pass. I don't know. Interesting. I think the VIX part, the futures part, obviously has been working all right. Obviously, it depends on where you're looking at the strike, how that option part. Actually, he goes on to say, I guess he doesn't. He's kind of torn on it too. He says, I'm stuck on the call kicker strike. What is the ideal strike month combo for max gain with protection against apocalypse?
Well,
I love our listeners. Don't want to pay too much for the call, but also don't want to get run over by the VIX train. Well,
I want everything. I want everything for free and to make a lot of money.
Exactly.
Dear Volatility Views, do you have a trade where I make a lot of money and it's easy? That's basically the question we get just about every day. And the answer is, if I did, I would not tell you.
Yeah, we do. This is asking a lot. He wants to make all the money with all the hedging and not shell out. I mean, if you're going to shell out for this, you're going to shell out a lot. And obviously that call kicker strike is where you're going to get just killed because that obviously has not worked out.
You could do it as a call spread, or why not try using a put instead of buying the call?
I was just going to say this guy's trading a put anyway. Just buy a put and go with that. Put spread, see how that works out. At least you know what your outlay is. You're not going to get too run over if you do a put spread. Or maybe you do, or even a ratio put spread. That gets a little funky out there in VIX land. And then you can do some funky things. And you're not dealing with this, as you mentioned, the apocalypse, where if that VIX, a day like today, that spread could be painful. And what are you going to, I mean, if you want a cheap call, you got to go up to like a 25 handle. And that's not going to, so what are you going to get? You take 10 handles against you, and that's going to leave a mark, I would think. So yeah, there's no unfortunately there's no secret sauce. There's no way to buy, sell the futures at 13, buy the call at 15, and do it for a nickel, and have all the protection and all the downside. It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, I wish. But you are trading puts here, so maybe you look in some of the put strikes and see if that appeals to you here. Instead, what do we got here? We got Man Talk wants to know what is the actual implied volatility of Bitcoin. Well, Russell discussed this a little while ago on the show. In fact, we had this conversation a lot on Twifo a couple weeks. Someone wrote in with a similar question there as well. And I think you'd assume that it's off the charts based on what we've seen, in some of the headline-making moves out there. But it's actually a lot less than you'd think. As I recall, when we did the math on Twifo a few weeks ago, it was somewhere in the 65 to like 75% range, Mark. So elevated, but nowhere near, the 200,000% some people might expect, when they see these headlines out there. So it's lofty, but even compared to a basic equity, it isn't, completely out of the ballpark. Is that as surprising to you as it was to me initially, Mark?
Yeah, I have to say, I was a little surprised. I was expecting it to be a lot more like a regular equity, exactly. So.
Yeah, and I think Russell's analysis had it somewhere in the 70s, I believe. He showed it to be less volatile than VIX. So, once you get past some of these extreme outlier events where it sells off 40% in a couple of sessions, once you get past that, it actually isn't as wild of a bucking bronco as you might think. All right, we got time here for a few more, then we'll get on to the crystal ball, Mr. Meatball. Here's a fun one from Von Baron. I like that. We got good handles this week.
Ooh, I like that too. Yeah.
If nothing else, I might have to borrow that for my online name. The Von Baron is coming. Seems like he's links to an article. It was from Business Insider, and the article he says, Von Baron says, it seems like Whaley doesn't think people get his creation like they should, and he links to this article called VIX Creator. Investors don't understand my fear gauge. So I guess he's true. A couple of pull quotes he pulled from this. Whaley says, I don't think people understand it as well as they should. The VIX doesn't trade. It's just a number, which if you listen to this show at all, you know we've said many times.
Anybody listening to this show understands.
Yeah. He goes on to say what it is, where VIX is the volatility over the next 30 days, blah, 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 the futures versus the cash, blah, blah, blah. So that we kind of know all that. And I think the futures... VIX futures index is particularly staggering. It probably trades more shares in a day than Microsoft. You look at the turnover ratio, you find it's a huge number. People were just buying and holding. That number would be much lower. He says VXX, talking about VXX. VXX is incredibly actively traded. Would I have thought it would be this actively traded? No, but it is. I think we're all in that same boat. He goes on to say, if you look at VXX and go to the 13F filings, you'll see it's largely an instrument used by retail customers, not institutions. If you go over to the ownership of XIV, it's largely institutions that know that this thing will go downward through time. It only goes down a few cents a day, but if you get a volatility spike, you'll lose money, but you're not going to get that many spikes if you have a long-term investment. I said, in fact, if you go to the prospectus of these things, it explicitly states that if you buy and hold these things, you're sure to lose most, if not all, of your investment. But people still do buy and hold, and it's largely retail customers. Because how many retail customers look at the prospectus? Those things are 300 pages long. I'm with him there. Well, so, he's kind of echoing what we said on the show many times, which is, I think he's more talking about VXX than he is the VIX. Yeah. He's saying people don't understand VXX. And they're using it incorrectly, which is, we've said, in fact, he tried to create a product to that effect, did he not? With less than stellar success, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that was just that didn't work either, because that had some weird dividend. The fact of the matter is that it's very difficult, unless someone actually creates it's going to be very difficult to create something that tracks the VIX, unless you can find something that, maybe follows, like a variance market is the closest thing you could get. But I'm not sure if anybody wants to create a listed variance future, because the CBOE tried that and could not get the margining right. But if you want anything close to the VIX, get because the VIX is basically the price of a 30-day variance swap. And maybe that's where you could do it, but yeah, it's not tradable, and nobody's been able to figure out a good way to do it. A buy and hold VIX thing, there's just no way.
It's kind of a fundamental function of the product. Kind of hard to get around it without, as we've seen, weird distributions and dividends that no one, even Nobel laureates, can't make head or tails of. So it's hard to say that product is any more intuitive than this thing. All right, good questions, everybody. We got to keep on rolling though. Into our final segment, it is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball. This is, of course, the portion of the show where we guess. Sometimes, Mark, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but sometimes we guess with just freakish accuracy. I'm not sure if you recall what my wager was. We didn't do a show last week, obviously due to the holiday. So what my wager was going into the holiday vol on Friday from the week before. If you don't, I will refresh your memory. It was about a 9.75, I believe. And we closed around that day, right around 9.67. And the intraday was, I think, a little higher. So it was closer to 9.75. So it was about as close to a bullseye as I think you get, sir, in the vol space. So I think it just adds to my just almost scary streak at this point. So I should really just stop hosting the show and just start slinging the futures, because it's just getting a little scary at this point. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, you're so accurate. You've been nonstop.
In fact, forget the futures. I'm going to do the VMAX VMin. That's where I'm going. That's where the big dollars are, sir.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Huge. I can't wait.
Huge money.
I'll be your first investor.
Huge money. All right. This is, of course, the portion of the show, listeners, where we try to once again replicate my my performance in recent weeks. We'll see if I can keep it up. That's a tall order, but we shall try with, let's see. Yeah, I was at 9.75 last time. And, this time, of course, as we are finishing up the show here, listeners, VIX is a little juicy. I'm not going to lie. VIX Cash, as we mentioned, still hovering around a nice 12.5. It's still, so this is the weird time to be able to prognosticate vol, because we honestly have no idea what other shoes are going to drop. Even later today, this investigation is kind of just getting underway, and what all the ramifications and the responses are and everything else. It's a lot to internalize in a few seconds of analysis, but we shall do so once again. And I don't know, Mr. Meatball, I'm not buying this increase. I'm thinking we're going to go back down, and we're going to go back down over the next week, I think fairly substantially. Maybe not quite as low as we were back in the 9.75 range, but I'm going to go a little higher, but not much. I'm going to say 10.25, Mr. Meatball.
I like it.
And since the Russell is not here, his ghost will pick a nice 42.5. He's really feeling a spike coming next week.
Aren't you gonna feel silly if we get a crazy vol pop and Russell wins next week?
I will feel silly.
And it'll be the one time
Russell is great.
He went the highest and was right, and he didn't even guess it.
And he wasn't even here. He actually does better when he's not here, so he might be thankful. He might be thankful for that pick from me. We'll see. So I've hedged myself either way. You see the genius there. All right, Mr. Meatball, are you buying this rally, or are you selling it?
Well, let's put it this way. My position is very short now, so I would do really well if this thing fades, which means I should probably buy the rally.
Uh-oh. Gonna hedge your book here on vol views.
I'm gonna hedge my book on vol views, and then how can I lose that? So I'm gonna
get all the pretend dollars on this show, all of them.
Correct. That's my plan. So I'm gonna go. Let me think. I'm gonna go with, let's say 11.25. So a little lower, but not very much.
Not too. I thought you were gonna say like 14.5 or something.
Yeah.
So that's not too rich, sir. It's rich for normal for you, but not too terrible. All right, listeners, we got 10.25 on the downside. Mr. Meatball in the middle there at 11.25, and Mr. Russell taking up the top as usual, 42.5. And unfortunately, that's going to do it for the crystal ball. Also going to do it for this episode of Volatility Views. Before we go, Mr. Meatball, what's cooking in the land of the pit, sir?
We're going to be doing our VIX thing starting, I believe, next week. So be on the lookout for that. And again, read our blog every day. We try and put something worth understanding in every day. We really do. So that would be what I would say.
There you go. And while you're at it, of course, head on over to CBOE.com. That's CBOE.com.
CBOE.
Just don't pronounce it that way. It's just CBOE.
No, it's CBOE.
But when you're typing it in, it is CBOE.com. Check out the blogs where Mr. Russell and his team put a lot of content up there. And also check out, maybe some of the latest from RMC Asia. And we'll hope to get a breakdown from Mr. Russell on that next week. And on behalf of the ghost of Russell and the Meatball and indeed myself, I want to thank all of you out there in the listening audience for downloading, streaming, subscribing, and all the other fun stuff you do, including sending in such great questions. Keep them coming. And we'll see you next week for more Volatility Views.
Volatility Views is brought to you by CBOE. CBOE is one of the world's largest exchange holding companies, and we're inspired every day to innovate some of the industry's most powerful products, technology, and solutions. We're the industry's leading force driving access to global markets. A better trading experience and powerful data and analytics to inform better strategies. We're committed to engineering new ways to help our customers realize their potential and navigate the marketplace of tomorrow, today. Visit CBOE.com. That's CBOE.com to learn more about our expanded offerings.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.